Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of 2021. Before I start, I wanted to share something with you all. Now, lately, I've been seeing a lot of cyberbullying and people taking advantage of others or making them feel worse than they already do. Now, I'm all for fighting for human rights and educating, creating awareness and empowerment, but none of that happens when the rapport you are trying to build is done with violent and aggressive communication. We are all suffering in our own way. We have all had to adapt and change, some faster than others. And for those who believe they are on the right track, it is for you to guide, share, and elevate the human population or community around you, not to judge, point the finger, blame, and belittle. Now, on that note, I want to introduce our next guest, someone who works hard on bridging the inequality gap and fights hard for women empowerment. My guest, Dalal Mawad, is an award-winning journalist and a senior correspondent for the AP News Agency. Dalal, thank you for being with us today. And before we begin today's topic, I'd like you to take the chance to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, Sophie. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me. So, as you said, I'm a journalist. I work for the Associated Press. I'm a senior producer and correspondent. I've worked in different fields in journalism. So, I've done a bit of print, a bit of broadcast. I was an on air reporter for a local TV here. I've worked with the UN, with their media and comms team, traveling the world, telling stories of refugees and displaced people. And I've been with the AP for the past year and a half. I'm also a feminist and, as you said, an advocate of women's rights and girls' rights. And I think it's the environment that I grew up in. It's the country, the region that has pushed me to become one. I think I've had to, fight my own battles to make it to where I am today. And so I like to empower other women as well, so they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. And I'm a mom as well to a girl who's 4. And I love having a girl because I think it's my own personal challenge when it comes to girls' rights and women's rights and raising her and, the right way or, with everything that I believe in. So, yeah, and I'm here. I'm in Beirut, outside Beirut, but I'm here in Lebanon.
Well, you're not going to be here for very long, though. You've been offered a really nice position, I believe, in France. You're taking your leave soon, aren't you?
Yes, not a position per se. I mean, I am moving with the AP probably, but I've been offered what is called in France a talent visa. So it will allow me to take my daughter and to move with my family. We will be moving to France soon. And it allows me to work and to live there. And the reason why I'm leaving is because I feel like I owe it to her. And as you know, things have been quite dire in Lebanon, and I feel like I can no longer protect her. I think the blast of August 4th was really a turning point. I've always wanted to leave. I was becoming cynical and really hopeless, but it was really that day I said, that's it. I need to make sure she's safe. She deserves
Now,
better.
it's now time to move on to our topic, and it's a hot topic, and it sparked some controversy over the last couple of years. It's the Qatar and the GCC. Oh, plus Egypt. So, Dalal, since you've been covering this relationship for many years, can you give us a little brief history as to why these sanctions were laid on Qatar to begin with, and what is this new rekindling of relations, and how long do you think this will last?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, there were 4 countries, namely Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, plus Egypt, as you mentioned, who decided in June of 2017 to start an embargo. We're talking here about an airspace, a maritime, and a land embargo on Qatar. And they accused Qatar of supporting terrorism. And they had a list of demands back then to lift this embargo. These demands included shutting down Al Jazeera, the media network. It included cutting ties with Iran, removing Turkey's military presence in Qatar, and other demands. And so basically, in this group of four countries, you have mainly Saudi Arabia, who was worried about Qatar's growing relation with Iran, Iran seen as Saudi's regional rival. For the UAE, it was more Qatar's support to groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood, mainly for Egypt and for the UAE. Qatar is seen as supporting political Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, and in other countries. And Bahrain was just like Saudi Arabia, more worried about Iran, and so they started this embargo, hoping that Qatar would make concessions, would cut its ties with Iran and Turkey, and to give in to these demands. 3.5 years, more than 3.5 years, it's 3.5 years now. Um, Qatar didn't really give in, and we know that it tried to bypass this embargo by finding alternative routes for supplies, because it used to import about 60% from these countries. Um, and it started building stronger ties with Turkey and Iran. There's an interesting New York Times article recently that said it was paying Iran $100 million a year to find, alternative routes for its airplanes. So it was costly, but it found a way out. It was also trying to build stronger economic ties with Europe, for instance, with Germany, and it was also still relying on its gas reserves, the third largest in the world, to keep its economy going, also working on internal production, its own food security. And despite the fact that this embargo was costly for its economy, its economy was still growing
Yeah, I
until
was just going to say to you, I mean, Qatar is quite an affluent country to begin with. I mean, having this embargo on it didn't necessarily have an effect like it will on Iran or Lebanon or Syria, you know?
these were not sanctions. It was more like an embargo, right, on your as we said, the borders, etc. But they also cut all economic relations with Qatar. And as I said, it was important because when you're importing 60% of your needs from these countries, all of a sudden, your supply route is cut. But what they did is they found these alternative routes of supplies, and they were importing mainly from Turkey and Iran. And actually, they grew closer to these two countries. And even Qatar's emir used this to gain popularity. The Qataris, when you talk to them, they would say this was a stab in the back, from these GCC countries. Now, the timing now is interesting. So why after three and a
Yeah,
half
this
years?
is why I wanted to ask you one thing. Now, do you believe, or I know it's very hard to take your opinion, and being a journalist, it's we tend to like to give both sides of the story and remain unbiased. But I think it would be interesting to know: do you think that this was done to appease the U.S., and if so, shouldn't this be something that propels the Arab world forward instead of it trying to pander to the West?
Hmm. I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily an opinion. This is my analysis, and a lot of people were saying this is, as I said, the timing is interesting because this is the end of the Trump's administration. And there were ongoing negotiations, which Kuwait was mediating with the support of the US for a while, and there was no breakthrough. So, why was there a recent breakthrough? And we are seeing an appeasement. We're not seeing a full reconciliation. Let's be clear here. For those who don't know, so the land, maritime, and airspace embargo is gone, and they are restoring diplomatic relations. But we are far from a full reconciliation. So the analysis here is that, yeah, maybe Saudi Arabia specifically wanted to give Trump a last diplomatic gift or reward. At the same time, maybe Saudi Arabia wanted also to consolidate its front against Iran, and so it wanted to reunify its ranks. And having Qatar among, this front to face Iran was important. And it is worried because it does know that Biden will have a harsher stance on Saudi Arabia. And he said that he was going to go back to the negotiation table with Iran. And so, really, Saudi maybe wants to get ready for this new administration. And I think Trump also leaving wants to see a united front facing Iran. I mean, part of this maximum pressure policy that he's adopted for so long. So I think the timing is interesting. And Saudi Arabia was really in the lead. It really wanted to end this rift with Qatar. And on the other hand, we don't know what concessions Qatar has made to reach this deal. I mean, it's really unclear. Qatar, as I said, has stronger relations with Iran and Turkey because of that embargo. It There's nothing that says that Qatar has stopped supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. And the only concession that we know is that Qatar will no longer pursue legally what is called the quartet. It's going to, drop, this the legal course against them. But yeah, it's unclear what concessions Qatar has made. But this reunification, if we want to call it, Qatar coming back to this GCC bloc is seen as a step forward for the U.S. Trump administration, for Saudi and the UAE, and this is what we heard from leaders of these countries. But there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and I think that the largest rift or the deepest rift is still with the UAE. These are countries that are really at sharp ideological odds. They are pitted against each other's in regional conflicts. Take Libya for example. And the UAE is really worried about, Qatar's support to the Muslim Brotherhood and, other um, political, political Islam groups. Qatar denies, supporting terrorist groups such as Al Qaeda or ISIS, although there were accusations against it for that. But the Muslim Brotherhood itself, is considered as a terrorist organization by some countries.
Now,
Um,
I just wanna ask you a quick question here. Now, what's interesting the most is that you're saying to me that the UAE is the one that seems to have a larger conflict or a larger rift or a larger ideological. They can't seem to agree with Qatar. However, Saudi being this driving force and wanting to create this peace, and you did make a point to say to me that this could be maybe a gift to Trump before he leaves. Now,
mhm,
my question to you is one, Saudi has done a lot of stuff in the last 4 years since Trump has been president. They've been given a lot of leeway. They've got away with assassinating a high ranking journalist.
yeah.
My first question is, could this be a way to cover all that up and say, look at us, we're trying to do peace, we're trying to move forward, we're trying to rekindle our Arab ties, and the UAE making peace with Israel is sort of this way of saying, arms up, we're not here to create more conflict. However, Qatar, on the other hand, talking with Turkey. We saw Qatar in Iran as soon as Qasem Soleimani was assassinated as well. They were there 2 days later. So, as a journalist and as a person and as a human being, we should be talking, all of us talking to each other anyway. We're in a region where if we do not talk to each other, we have seen how quickly embargoes are laid on, sanctions are laid on, and conflict comes to play. Now, do you find yourself as a journalist witnessing this, thinking this is maybe a path to unification, to tolerance, to be able to maybe sit at a drawing board and start to really map out and hash out how we want to move forward in the next couple of years? Or do you think this is all a facade and something deeper is going on, and these ties could easily be severed within a matter of minutes?
I mean, if you ask me as an Arab and an individual living in this region, I don't think anyone wants to see more conflicts, right? And no one wants to see this rift ongoing. before I answer your second suggestion, what I think is more realistic, because as I said, I think the path is still um, it's a long way to go. We're not even near full reconciliation. I think that Saudi Arabia and the other countries just realized that, this boycott largely failed to achieve its initial objective, which was to put pressure on Qatar to cut its ties with Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood. Um, its support to these groups, which, by the way, are seen as a domestic challenge for countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Egypt, right? So they want to avoid other countries supporting similar groups because this is a domestic challenge. But I think no, I wouldn't call it a facade, and I don't think Saudi Arabia is trying to distract from what are other things it's doing in the region, whether it's oppression or killing of journalists, or its involvement with the UAE and Yemen and other conflicts in the region. I really think it wanted to end this rift because it makes more sense to have a united front against Iran, and this is what Trump wanted as well, and they've realized that actually, the this embargo was counterproductive. Qatar ended up becoming closer to Iran and Turkey. But is it really the beginning of the end of this rift? Maybe, but I think there's still a long way to go, and there are no guarantees. And I think more problems are going to emerge. And as I just mentioned, I mean, these countries are against each other, not just when it comes to these issues, but as I mentioned, like in Libya, the Qatar and the UAE are supporting two rival governments. Um, there might be economic interests as well. For instance, Egypt is clearly interested in economic development and economic ties. Um, but it's still unclear. I think it's just too soon. This is my answer. I think we need to wait and see where this is going. Even the agreement they reached recently in the summit last week. Um, I mean, we haven't seen the full declaration, the content of it, but it also sounds like not much has changed. You don't see any clarity on a lot of issues. It's just, okay, we're restoring diplomatic relations, we're stopping the embargo, we hurried together hugging and taking pictures, but have we really resolved like the deep issues that have pitted us against each other? I don't think so. So, and as I said, even the leaders of these countries, the UAE and Saudi, have said that there's a long way to go. And I think the people also, like the Qataris, I don't think they're going to easily forget what happened. As I said, they considered this as a stab in the back, how like overnight they were put under this embargo. And it's why probably the popularity of the emir rose, because he was really able to manage this crisis rather successfully. And I don't know if you remember the pictures of people rushing to grocery shops and supermarkets at the
My
beginning. They were really
brother lived in Doha actually when this happened, and he was actually taking pictures of the supermarkets, and nearly most of the products, or nearly all of the products, were from Turkey. So I am. What
and
kind?
Anwar Gargash, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, said we have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do. Everyone is aware that this is just a positive step forward, but they're nowhere near a full reconciliation. That's for sure.
And the thing is, the reason why I'm focusing on being a facade is because, as you said, I mean, even in a relationship between you and your husband, or between you and your boyfriend, you can't just say, yes, no, we don't want to fight anymore. We're just going to go on pause. When you have issues that you need to talk about, or you need to bring up, or you need to heal from, that's why we have therapies. So what kind of therapy can we do here? I just, with Iran coming into play and Turkey coming into play, Turkey seems to be rogue anyway, doing whatever it wants, whenever it wants, however it wants to do it. It's got no form of guidance. It doesn't listen to anybody. It's so interesting to understand is what kind of international role does Qatar want to play by associating itself with countries that are completely rogue and don't necessarily want to sit at a table and find any form of reconciliation and peace and to heal the deepest seated issues that are actually causing these conflicts and directly affecting humans, their population, and inequality.
Yeah, but Sophie, I mean, I'm not here to take sides, but I think Qatar has its own narrative, and that's not how they see their, international relations and their relationship with Turkey or their support to the Muslim Brotherhood, or they at some point in their interferences in the region were saying we are supporting, the oppressed people, we are helping people reach, their rights and their full civil and political rights. Here I'm talking about Egypt and in Syria. And the rift started when all these with the Arab Spring also, and Qatar's interference in the Arab Spring, and Saudi also. And I remember Syria because I covered that. Who is taking the lead? Is it Saudi? Is it Qatar? Who is doing what? And there was a conflict there. And I mean, I don't have any evidence of Qatar supporting extremist groups, but there were allegations, and it has its own agenda, but it was clearly trying to position itself as a leader in the region, at times looking like a rival to Saudi Arabia. Today, you have the UAE also taking that seat in the region. It's no longer just Saudi, Qatar, and the UAE is involved politically also in various conflicts in the region. So I mean, you have two different narratives, and the way the Qataris look at this is that this embargo was unfair. We don't support terrorism. We have our reasons for maybe supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, and for maintaining relations with Turkey. Turkey has a military presence in Qatar, and economic relations. Same with Iran, and they were Qatar's saviors during the embargo. So I think it's going to be very difficult for Qatar to just cut these ties with these two countries. But certainly, I mean, what the Saudis are trying to do, and the Trump administration was trying to do, is to bring all these Sunni countries against this Shia arrival. Now that we've had this conflict for a while in the region.
Do you think that when Biden comes into play, because we have mentioned it and you've mentioned it yourself, that he's going to want to bring Iran back to the drawing board. He is going to try to approach Iran, back in the way that Obama did, in order to try to create some form of global peace, in order for all of us to sort of live and understand where we are and how we're going about our life. Now, I live in this region. It's always been a volatile region. I was born and raised in Dubai. I've lived in Riyadh. I've lived in Jeddah. I know the GCC more than I know the Levant, and I'm half Lebanese. So I think what is interesting to me is, do you think that Qatar can now maybe come out as a player that maybe mediates between the West and Iran and Turkey? Maybe
I mean,
that could be a role that it could find itself playing.
Qatar is so. Just to answer your first question, I do think Biden will have a different policy, and this is why I think the Saudis were in a rush to really consolidate their position and maybe try to, be on good terms also with the Biden administration by having this unified front, because they're worried he's going to have a harsher stance towards Saudi. As you said, Trump had a different attitude with Saudi Arabia, and it was just a free card on so many issues. And I think Biden has expressed various times that he will sit on the negotiation table again with Iran, and we expect this to happen. Now, I think on your second question, whether Qatar is going to be a player or a mediator, I think Qatar is already a player and a mediator. Qatar has been a very important mediator when it comes to the conflict in Afghanistan and the talks between the Afghans and the Taliban. And this is, dates back years ago when I was working at Al Jazeera, and I was in Doha, and I covered, various of these meetings. Qatar has tried to play a mediation role in Syria as well, although it was involved. It is a regional player and an important one, and it has good ties with the US, by the way, even with the Trump administration. Although Trump at the beginning was siding with Saudi and the quartet, but then I think he kind of shifted, and there are good ties between Qatar and the US. And yes, Qatar can play that role. Qatar plays a mediation role in Lebanon as well, has played that role. Um, and I think Qatar wants to portray a positive image on the international scene. And I think Al Jazeera is one of those tools, by the way. It's a soft power tool. So yeah, it's definitely a player and could be a bigger player. And I don't think anyone wants to see that rift ongoing. It's in no one's interest, whether the quartet or Qatar's interest. And as I said, it remains to be seen where this is going, whether we're going to go towards a full reconciliation and we're going to have answers as on many of these deep issues that have created problems between these countries, or more problems are going to appear. And this is, as you said, might be a facade. And it was just the timing was interesting. The Saudis were trying to gain something. The Americans were trying to gain something. Qatar had nothing to lose. And so this will not go anywhere. But I can't answer that. I don't know.
Dalal, it's been absolutely wonderful having this discussion with you. I think, as you said, there's so many questions left unanswered, and only time will tell how this is going to play itself out, especially now with the Houthis being designated as a terrorist
First,
organization
yeah.
by the United States. So there are so many things developing so fast, so quickly. And it's so sad to see to see you leave to Paris. So you're going to be watching us from abroad instead of telling us from the inside. So I'm definitely going to have to hit you back up to see what it looks like from over there.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to not covering the Middle East anymore, to be honest. I think I need a break to change my beat, try to deepen my knowledge maybe of Europe or other topics and stories. I'm looking at this as a challenge, as, something different. Um, I mean, I've enjoyed covering and reporting this region, but it's endless conflicts, really. It's tiring. It can drain you.
I totally understand. I mean, look at the bags under my eyes. I try to cover them up, but I don't think I've got rid of them successfully. So Dalal, I'm going to let you go. I know how busy you are. I just wanted to say to our listeners again, you can find her on Instagram and definitely very active on Twitter, Dalal Mawad. That's Mawad, just so you don't spell it any differently. And for everybody listening, if you've enjoyed what you've heard, we are a crowd-funded organization, free of editorial, free of limitations, and we want to remain that way. So we require funding. If you want to make a one-time donation or you'd like to be a member, you can find all the information on levantx.com. Now, we want to give one more thank you to Dalal. And Dalal, I want to ask you one last thing, because I always leave my podcast with my guest and the listeners. You have their attention. Is there anything that you would like to leave with them today?
Oh, wow. um, I know this past year has been really difficult on everyone, especially the Lebanese. So just want to say that I do hope the next year will just be easier, and we get out of this myriad of crises that we've been struggling with. I hate to say that I'm very skeptical about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but I do hope I'm wrong. Nothing, just want to say that I just hope for better days, because this is still January and there's a long year ahead of us. And it feels like it's the fifth quarter of 2020 so far. It doesn't feel like it's a new year. Nothing, yeah, just wishing for better days, because I know the Lebanese have been through a lot, and I'm maybe privileged to be able to leave, and some people want to leave but cannot. And I just want to send strength and love to all those who have chosen to stay. I know this is very brave of them, and I admire them. I've tried for so many years, and I think I'm ready for a break. Yeah, that's it. And thank you for tuning in. And it was a pleasure.
Dalal, thank you so much. And everybody.